people turn on their stuff. All right. It's about 4 o'clock. Okay. All right. All right, I'd like to officially call to order the meeting for the planning board for May 14th at 4 o'clock. If there are no objections, I've had a request to move number 2 to number first up, which is the Black Isle Land Trust. Does anybody at the table have any problems with that? No. Okay. Hearing no objections, we'll start with number 2 and then go back to number 1. Black Island Land Trust, Martha Ball and William Ball, Cornack Road, application for a unified development review for a minor subdivision of an existing parcel into 2 lots, leaving 1 residential lot and 1 lot subject to conservation easement. Application for a variance from section 306C. We will today accept, review, and act on the waiver request and then set a date for the public hearing. Okay, Martha?
Yes.
Anybody? Oh, sorry, come and introduce yourself, please.
Fair Development for the Land Trust.
Okay.
I think this was explained briefly by Joe Priestley
Mhm.
back in April. And I think he summarized the salient points of the application pretty concisely. I actually went back and videoed the proceeding just to make sure there wasn't anything that I wanted to add. May have missed, which I probably highly unlikely. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, because our audience may or may not, with Zoom, may not have been with us necessarily, if you could just give a quick overview of what the project is, and then we'll go through the waivers and we'll have any questions or requests for next month and then set the hearing date.
So it's a 2-plot minor subdivision. We're seeking relief from the frontage requirements as well as from the road standards under the planning subdivision regulations.
Mhm.
And the purpose of the subdivision is twofold. Number 1, it provides for conservation of 2 tracts that are currently already conserved on the larger parcel that will remain. So there's going to be subdivided out a 3-acre parcel, a little over 3 acres, which we're calling sort of the house lot, which is where Martha's and house and the out structures are located. And those will remain there. All the setbacks are met for all the structures that currently exist on the property. However, the lot line will be moved back into the property as you see on the plans, which will require the current driveway to be just provide access to that property, and also to be a fork off that property or off that right of way to the back lot, which is to be the land trust property. So easements will be conveyed. This is part of a purchase and sale agreement. The subdivision is, or the purchase and sale agreement is contingent upon subdivision approval. It's a good project. It preserves a large, nearly 20 acres of land while preserving at the same time a lot for residential purposes.
Okay, good. All right, you have your checklist in front of you. I'll just go through it very quickly and then see if there are any questions or comments or anything you want to add back in. They have asked for waivers on the base flood elevation, location, dimension, and materials of existing or proposed retaining walls, drainage and surface runoff calculations, landscaping plan, proposed utilities plan, written confirmation by the Director of Public Works that adequate public water and sewer would be available. On-site wastewater management treatment, determination from the Coastal Resource Management Council if applicable, written comments or advisories from the Historic District Commission. The rest of the material has been submitted. So are there any questions or comments on any of the waivers asked for?
No.
Any concerns on the waivers?
I have a question.
Okay.
I just had a quick.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, you talk into the mic.
Thank you. I just had a quick question on the waivers. It didn't, I read through the waivers, but I missed this, but in the narrative, it indicates that no development is currently anticipated on the larger resulting lot, and as such, until such time as development is sought, the land trust seeks waivers from any requirements which would apply to proposals involving construction. Would that be on the house lot or on the others?
That would be on the other lots. It would be up to the owner of the house lot to apply for the development relief that would be necessary. That would include frontage relief, actually, which is what we're seeking right now.
Oh, it's only seeking frontage relief,
That's the only
not
thing.
construction relief.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, that was made, I thought made very clear, and we will put that again in the final decision.
Yeah,
So that-
if I did recognize there was a little bit of disconnect, if I'm buying the narrative and you read the
Yeah.
waiver.
okay.
Is they're looking for frontage requirements and relief from the road construction requirements.
Should there ever be any chance, any glimmer of an idea of development on the larger conservancy lot, that would require all sorts of relief, which would be a condition. We would have to get it. There'd be no way we'd be issue any permits if we didn't get it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Anybody want any additional information? Okay. And I think all we're left to do is approve the waivers, which we've done, and set a hearing date for June 11th, if that works for you all. Okay, okay. Then I'll make a motion to approve the waivers and schedule the hearing for June 11th.
Second.
Okay, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We will see you next month.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, going back to number 1. Town of New Shoreham, Block Island Health Services. Public hearing on an application for development plan review to install a ground-mounted solar energy system. The property is located in the medical center zone, zoning ordinance section 425. Any ground-mounted solar array exceeding 720 square feet requires a special use permit. However, this property is located in the medical center zone, and the permitting authority is the planning board, which is why this is here before you. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening. Will you introduce yourself and then tell us what all you have to say?
For the record, Sergio Ferenzia, from Ferenzia and Associates. My offices are located at 99 Mechanic Street, Pawcatuck, Connecticut. The application in front of you, the plans, were prepared by my office. The surveyor, that in my office is Mark Castellanos. The surveys you'll see is signed by him, and I am the engineer of record. With this portion of the work. And I am licensed in the state of Rhode Island. The application before you this evening, and with me tonight is Ray Torrey, who's on the building committee for the Block Island Medical Facility, Medical Center. Just want to make sure it's clear that the portion of work that I've been engaged to do is for the northern portion of the lot for the solar facility. I believe that you previously permitted, it's under construction. I'm not sure what the status of construction is right now, or I might know a little bit more of the medical facility. That was done separately, and this is a separate application for the purposes of the ground mount solar. The plans that we have in front of you have all been submitted to the town. Nothing that you haven't seen before. I just put them up for presentation purposes. This is the survey we did of the lot. Which shows, the array of buildings that are either being renovated, under construction, presently there. And our focus of our work was on this leg of the property to the north. It's a grass sloping, pretty gently sloping, about 8–10%, down to an area which is a little bit steeper, and then to a wetlands, in that wetland edge further down. to the north. As it goes down gradient, as you go from south to north. The area is mostly grass well, completely grass, where the proposed solar facility is gonna go. We had our project biologist, AES, Evanston Environmental Services, come out and flag that, wetland feature. And we subsequently, a report was filed with the application, which identifies what all the buffers and the setbacks are associated with such. I can say though that we are staying outside of DEM wetlands jurisdiction because we're going to be more than 100 feet away with this solar array. So the proposed solar array consists of 4 separate rows of solar panels. They're aligned with the more or less parallel to the slope, and down the slope. So and they are facing a north-south direction, more or less. The arrays, we try to keep them. Our client wanted to make sure we keep them furthest down the hill that we could, so that it didn't have a tremendous visual impact from the facility itself, from the medical facility. Given I believe there's some residence cottages there, so we try to keep it furthest away, but also keep it out of that wetlands jurisdiction, so we don't encroach on any of the wetlands or the property associated with it. We've submitted to the town. We got comments from your town engineer. He requested that we implement some stormwater management on the site because of the panels. I've done a lot of solar facilities and much larger ones. We've done small ones like this. And generally the DEM guidance is if you have your panels parallel to a slope and it's well vegetated grass and you have significant panel width between the arrays, you really don't have to do too much, but town engineer felt that we should be implementing some best management practices here, which my clients were not opposed to. So what we incorporated was an infiltration trench at the end. You can see a cross section of it here. The water comes off of the edge of the panels. They're facing a southerly direction, so they're facing uphill. Off that leading edge, the water will be there will be a drip edge. When it gets to that drip edge, we've put some just some stone kind of diaphragm trenches with some grass in between to make sure that flows evenly down the slope, so that it spreads out. We get that sheet flow that's best, and so it doesn't consolidate and create rills or erosion. You get that sheet flow, and then at the end, there's a more substantial stone trench that's here that'll collect the water, allow a lot of it to infiltrate from those panels, and then anything that doesn't get collected or overflows from that can do so once again in a sheet flow manner and continue down into the wetland. But it gets the prerequisite treatment over and above what we typically do for solar panels. The other comment that we received was making sure that it was visually screened from the adjacent properties. So we added a vegetated buffer along the westerly property line to protect that neighbor, and then also on the northerly side, which also doubles as an area of revegetation on the wetland side. And those will serve to visually buffer. And I believe that Ray's here, he can explain more, but they have every intention of speccing out those trees to a minimum height, elevations, the appropriate spacing, and type of materials that will create that opaque buffer to the visual buffer to the neighbors. So once again, Ray's here. If there's any other questions you want to speak or the public to, that's about it for my presentation, but I'm here for answer any questions.
Good. Great.
Thank you.
Ray?
Yes, at April's meeting, I did mention, I made this.
And we asked you to bring it. Yes, I remember. Thank you for bringing it.
You can see where the array is going to be. Now, I would need a board twice as long to show you the whole property. From the back of the solar here, or rather the infiltration trench is probably almost 300 feet of property going down slope to, Evans Hollow. But since that, it's not, you know, you can visualize that sort of, that's what, let's see, where's,
Why don't you put it on one of the chairs? I would hate to have it
Okay,
get,
again, better.
yeah.
okay. Here,
Hey.
Main Road is here.
Right,
This is the new medical center building. This is the addition to it here, but the whole facility has been refurbished. Doctor's house, garage, Davidson house, and the new residence building. And then the solar panels back here. That is, there, it doesn't show it, but there's 9 feet between each array of panels.
okay.
So it's like,
Yeah, it's a little tighter
yeah,
Yeah, he ran out of board.
there.
Yeah.
And also the board, this actually, trails off. Actually, goes down lower.
I know you said that you would have buffered let's see, the west side, I think it is, and the north side. What about the east side?
the east side.
Yeah, is that an issue or?
I brought some other people to verify what I found, but along the east side here, there seems to be plenty of vegetation. Right here that would screen where Tristan Payne lives,
Yeah,
and behind his house, he has a garage, and behind that, there's, in my estimation, enough vegetation that's not gonna be a problem there. However, we do plan to, once the array, if the array is approved and constructed, we go to all the abutters and ask them if they would like us to. But the 2 properties that I thought would definitely probably be affected is, one is David Russo owns this property here, and this property, his lot goes this way, and David's gonna build a new, he's gonna knock his house down, which is here, and build a new one here. So he would see it, so we're gonna screen it this way,
okay,
and then, it's funny. This letter I picked up in my box about 20 minutes ago. And it was mailed on April 11th to all the abutters, it's certified mail. I just got it back today. But it's referencing to the Troy Reynolds, who is the owner of the house that I was concerned with, which is right here. His house sits behind his mother's house, which sits behind the White House, on High Street. So, I asked Mr. Terencia and his firm they specified screening here. And he has Troy Reynolds has a house about right here with a deck that sort of would see, would look out on but they're the only 2 properties I think that are
affected.
definitely affected.
Yeah,
There's-
okay. I just wanted to make sure that the east side was screened, but you're telling me that there's plenty of brush, shrubbery, whatever, so that's fine.
Yes,
Okay. What about, one other quick question? There, I see looking here, the road stops partway in. Are you gonna be able to get to the solar array all right for repairs and that kind of thing? After construction?
but not with heavy equipment, but with anyone going down in a say, all of this from about here to here has been reinforced with a special
Yeah, I did see that one.
tiles in there so that the fire engines could get back there for the residence building.
Mhm.
But for the solar building, it's just, it would just be, you could drive on a car, but not on a pickup truck, but not a fire engine, without getting worried about getting hit,
Yeah.
but it's metal.
Is-
It's not
I-
really metal.
I was gonna say, probably not too concerned about a fire unless it was some kind of electrical. In that case, it would be on this end probably. Okay, all right. Other questions and comments?
No, that was my only one.
I just want to make sure that if the fire engines do need to get in there, they're obviously going to get there one way or another. So. Okay. Peter, questions, comments? Okay. All right. Let's see, we need to accept, where are we here? All right, properties located in medical zone and we are the permitting authority. This is kind of the first time we've done this, so we're still getting our way through it. So I will make a motion that we give a favorable decision for the construction of a 4-unit solar array. Do I have a second?
Second,
Actually, if, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go right ahead.
You probably want to, you have two things in front of you right now, the special use permit and the development review. This is sort of
Yes.
different than development plan review, which is its own set procedure set out by statute. This is a development review set out by the town ordinance that has its own procedure. But generally, you act on the special use permit before you.
Or
act
I do
on
the other,
plan.
okay, fine, I will do that. Okay, there's a checklist we have for a development plan review. It is on page 2 of your document that says development plan review application.
Fair. You also have to close the public hearing before you vote. I don't want you to need to, I don't know if you need to do that or not. I don't know. if you-
We didn't open the public hearing. Thank you.
Uh-oh.
As I said, this is our first time through this, so we're not doing it as smoothly as I would wish we would. Let me make a
After
motion.
the application ended, you may have to also
Yes,
put the record in the public hearing.
we're going to make a motion to open the public hearing, and then we're going to ask you to give a quick synopsis for the record.
second,
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Please give us a quick synopsis to correct my mistake. Thank you.
Good morning. As I indicated, prior, there's proposal is for 4 panels, 4 rows of panel arrays. And we've accommodated all the stormwater requirements of the town engineer on the site, as well as the visual screening to the west and to the north of those properties most directly impacted. And to the east, there is a significant vegetated buffer. Mr. Torrey said we'd be working with the neighbors as needed to make sure that that visual buffer was of adequate size and type and location to establish that visual screen.
Okay, and we also commented that the road is sufficient to get to the array with fire department in a case of an emergency.
We believe so, yeah.
Okay. We have a checklist. We did grant waivers for several items. Are there any other questions or comments?
No.
Anything else I should be asking that I didn't know enough to do? Okay, if there's no more further information, I will close the public hearing. Okay. Does the audience have any questions or comments? No? Hearing none, I will make a motion that the hearing be closed.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Right,
Who made that model?
I did.
Good for you.
nice job.
I hope you're gonna display it at the library or something.
I was in Las Vegas, but maybe I wasn't able to get to the Earth Day Fair because it was postponed a week.
Right,
I'll do it again, I guess, May 3rd.
right.
But anyway, I hope, I got people got to see it. I asked Mimi to display it.
I think it's great.
It's great.
I thoroughly enjoy it. Okay, for the board, we need to make a favorable advisory. Then over the next several weeks, staff writes up a decision and then it comes back to the board in June and we will either approve it, add to it, subtract, whatever. So that's kind of the process that we will be following for the rest of this. So any further questions for me before I make a motion to give a favorable review?
No.
Okay, all right, all those in favor? I'll make a motion to give a favorable review for the solar array for the.
Again, we need to make a motion for the special use permit.
Okay. That's what I'm not accustomed to. All right, I'll make a motion that we grant a special use permit for the building of a 4-row solar array. Does that cover it?
It should, the planning board should just be aware that the review of the special use permit is under the 517 of the zoning ordinance that has the specific and objective criteria under which the special permit has been reviewed. I think the board has the information in front of them and has also been provided information by the planner about meeting that special use criteria. So I think the board needs to find as facts
Yes.
that the plan meets that criteria.
Okay, and we have it listed for the finding of facts on the sheet that is from Peter's office, which says for application for special plan review. So do I have a second?
Sure.
Okay. If there's any other material we want to add to the fact, to the finding of facts, we can do that today, or if you want to add something that you think about over the next several weeks, it can be added in June when it comes back to us. So,
I think because this is a public hearing and the record is going to be composed of what's before the board today, the findings of fact have to be made by the board here at the open public hearing.
okay, then the finding of facts that according to the zoning ordinance, any ground mounted solar array exceeding 720 feet requires a special use permit. However, this property is located in the MC zone and is subject to development plan review. So the permitting authority is the planning board under unified development review. And 2, there is a ground mounted array proposed to be attached to the doctors and interim housing. There is an additional proposed roof mounted solar system in the doctor's office. So. the
Right, and
proposed-
then the 517 has specific standards for ground mounted systems and roof mounted systems. And I can list those for you, which are
Yes.
relevant to the facts.
Yes, please do.
For the specific standards for roof mounted systems, solar panels shall not extend above the highest point of the roof. And in no case shall a solar panel extend beyond the edge of the roof. And the panel shall not be higher than 2 feet above the plane of the roof. So you have that information in the the submissions in front of you, so you can find as a fact that the plans do or do not comply with that standard.
There's no roof involved.
Okay, we're not working with the roof at this point. We're working only with the solar array that is in the field. So the
Okay.
roof does not apply to us.
Okay. For the ground mounted systems, the first
That's what we're working with.
Okay, the first standard is shall not exceed 10 feet in height when adjusted to its highest seasonal position. That was the first standard. The second standard is shall comply with the minimum setbacks for accessory structure and uses. The third standard is the first 250 square feet of array size shall be exempt in the calculation of lot coverage. And the fourth is that any SES which exceeds 3 feet in height shall incorporate landscaping to visually screen.
Okay, and we are in compliance with that. That's correct. All right.
Right, so I think what you're suggesting is that the board finds as facts based on their review of the plan that the plan is in compliance with those standards.
Okay, fine. So it is in compliance. Okay. Anything else we need to add to the finding of facts?
Those are the only standards for
Okay.
ground mounted systems in 517.
All right, do I make that part of my motion? And any further comments or questions from the board or the audience? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Good. Thank you very much. Good luck on the project. I think it's a wonderful one. And thanks to the
So
rest of you for
now
helping
second-
us get through this.
Sorry, yeah,
There's now a second part of this, so you
Right,
now
yeah.
granted the special use permit. You now
Okay.
have to say that it complies with the development review of section 322 for the project.
Okay, a motion. That's fine. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions or comments?
No.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you again.
Thank you, guys. We'll try to do a better job the next time around. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you coming. That's a nice project. Great. All right, number 3. 251 Spring Street, plat 7, lot 27, advisory to the zoning board for an application for a special use permit under section 408. Ends and to renovate the existing walkout basement to a 5-room inn for employee housing. Hi, Blake.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you for having me, members of the board. This is an application for an inn for 5 year-round, hopefully year-round units for our employees. I say hopefully because we're waiting on engineering to determine that that portion of the building can be fully winterized. This lot is conforming to the town's dimensional standards. We're not seeking any relief. And everything is in your packet. It's pretty comprehensive. We've obtained allocation, or we have sufficient allocation for sewer and water as confirmed by the boards, the clerks of the boards. And we're providing 2 parking spaces. And I'd like to answer any questions the board has. I'm not familiar with your procedure, so I'll step
Okay.
back.
All right, one of the things we want to do is go through the waivers that you have requested.
And would that be on the development plan review application or the zoning special use permit?
Michelle, this is advisory to the zoning board, right?
Yes, it is.
And there's no development plan review.
There is
Required?
there's no development or plan review pending. Right now, the only thing that's pending is an application for a special use permit that's going to be before the zoning board. There's no DPR. It's basically a change in terminology based on some amendments that to the state statutes and that we then made to the ordinance. So instead of development plan review which is what we used to call it before, because development plan review has become its own specific procedure, what's before you right now is you are reviewing the plans and making an advisory recommendation in regard to the grant of the special use permit to the zoning board. So that is all that's in front of this board today, is that advisory recommendation on whether or not the zoning board should or should not grant the special use permit, or any conditions that should be imposed based upon your review of the site plans.
Okay, so I do not need to go over the waivers for the special use permit?
Correct. There,
Okay.
there are no waivers needed.
Okay.
or pending.
Fine. Good. Okay. So there's no change to the exterior at all, just to reiterate.
No change to the footprint. We went to the Historic District Commission, and for the state building code, you're required so many square inches of windows per room.
Mhm.
And I think probably in the last third of your packet, you'll see the windows which the
Right.
HDC approved.
So,
And so they're kind of farm windows if you look. It's this page here.
okay.
And that was the final approved plan by the HDC. And there will be 5 of those windows.
5 of those windows. All right.
Yes.
So no land disturbance or anything like that outside of the building?
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever. So no problems with that.
I'm just curious.
Go ahead.
Can the owner, or any owner for that matter, change those rooms over to hotel rooms at any point? Or would he or she have to go through a whole new permitting process?
So my reading of the ordinance, and I'm not your attorney, just the way I've read it, in my opinion, is that the town doesn't have a zoning provision for employee housing.
No.
You can build an inn or a hotel or an ADU. So I think any applicant coming before you would have all the rights that someone with an inn would have. I would say to you, our representation is that that one-story building is not suitable for our operations to be rented to guests.
Okay.
It would simply be for employees.
Yeah. We can always put in our recommendations that it be listed for employees, for,
Okay.
by employees. We've done
I,
that.
I would just
I would
caution
try.
that because again, we're here on a recommendation for a special use permit. Special use permits are considered to be permitted uses in the town in that area, subject to certain findings of certain conditions which are listed out in the ordinance. So the use of an inn, if it meets that, those conditions would be the use of an inn. And you can only condition it to impose based on the what the proposed development deems necessary to conform to the requirements of the special use permit and the performance standards listed in the ordinance. So again, while you can condition it to a certain extent, I would be very cautious. What we're doing here is deciding whether or not the application meets the standards of the ordinance for issuance of the special use permit.
Yeah, we have in the past listed as a condition that it would be for employee housing, where we've done in permits for other groups. However, I don't know whether the rules have changed in the last 2 years or not, so it's why I'm
They
saying that-
they've really emphasized that special use permits are deemed to be basically permitted uses.
okay.
And that's the words specific and objective have come from the recent statutory amendment criteria that those are the criteria that it's being determined for special use permits. There are conditions allowed and there is some flexibility in there. I just wanted to advise the board that there are specific standards for conditions that they want to consider before imposing them.
Okay, you want to read us the standards?
From 703E, it says, in granting a special use permit, the permitting authority may impose such additional conditions on the proposed permit as it deems necessary to conform to the requirements of Article 4, standards for uses requiring special use permits, and Article 5, performance standards. So if the condition is not necessary for conformance with Article 4 or Article 5, it would seem that it would be beyond the permissive scope of a condition based upon the reading of the ordinance. Again, like I said, there's some flexibility within there. I just wanted to caution the board accordingly.
I'd still like to figure out some way that we could say that one of the conditions is that it be used for employee housing, because that's the intent. And
Margie,
we think that that might be an appropriate use. Using it for guests, I do not feel would necessarily would be appropriate. So keep that in mind, figure out a way to do it. Comments, questions?
I have one.
Like this.
So this is the third time someone's had to apply for an inn for employee housing. So why don't we just address that directly sometime in the future with planning a definition or something? Because I'm sure Mr. Filippi would apply for an employee housing under employee housing if we had it. We don't. The town doesn't. So these,
Just to interrupt, the town council in the past has not been interested in a section on employee housing. They felt that the end was sufficient. I think they probably did not want to get into all the issues with employee housing. But that's just my take on it. So.
well, on that note, then
You
we,
can check again.
but then it's like to impose any conditions then is nonsensical. Like either the town has to address the employee housing requests
We can,
via in, which is the only avenue business owners are allowed to do it.
Exactly.
So.
That was the choice of a previous town
You know.
council. We could always talk to the current town council and see.
Because this came up with the
Yes, it's come up several
Draper
times since I've been on.
application, and we kept going back
Like
and
that.
forth.
This was the choice of previous
I
town
mean,
councils and that,
The floor plan that Mr. Filippi submitted doesn't look like it'll ever be used for guests on a nightly basis. This is from the parking lot entrance, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So this is 100% employee housing. So
We all agree that. It's just that it needs to get into the record, that's all.
Yeah.
We're
But-
not disagreeing.
I think we've discussed not only this, but also dormitory, like some type of definition for business owners
Yeah.
and the town to utilize.
And I agree with you, Chris, but
Yeah.
I'll go back again. The town council in the past did not want to get into this, which is why they left it. It was the end as a
Okay.
the permitting way of doing it.
But does that stop us from trying again?
No.
Well,
it's a
I
new
mean-
Town council, we could always go and talk to them.
Because after, how many rooms beyond?
10.
So then you get into what? A hotel?
Go into a hotel, which has a
Right,
whole
so-
different set of regulations.
Wouldn't it be a lot easier if we had like some definitions like a dormitory
I don't know.
or employee housing?
I'm just
'Cause
telling you what it was, not what should be or what
Yeah.
will be.
Maybe.
Just-
I
I
think it's
also
something that the
think-
planning board should address though down the line, because it's come up several times, that's all.
I
And it-
completely agree. And I think that one of the things as I was looking at the plans and it says right here, you cannot have a kitchen or food preparation facilities in an inn. But I think that's something that's actually pretty important for employee housing to allow people to be able to cook their own food. And so I think we have I echo what you're saying. We have a real problem that you're not able to build employee housing that I feel is suitable for employees because of the restrictions we have. So I would echo that. I think this is something we should take up. We have had 3 of these.
Mhm.
It's an issue. You know, and I always feel so badly when you see these people who arrive, there's nothing open. They're trying to work out here. They don't have anywhere to cook their own food. That's a problem to me that I think we should be addressing.
Agreed.
Okay, we'll have Jen add it to the list.
You're not allowed.
Okay. I just had one quick question. And maybe the narrative isn't part of the entire application, but the narrative requests 4 rooms, but the site plan obviously has 5, which is great.
That was a mistake.
That was mistaken. It was corrected on the record at the zoning hearing.
Okay.
So we're aware, I asked if they wanted me to supplement all the packages. They didn't say they did. They just said they were happy to correct it on the main application that zoning is using. We corrected it, initialed it. That was my error.
Okay, perfect. And then more on the clerk side of things, I noticed not a clerk error, but I noticed the submittal requirements wasn't signed. I don't know if it was signed since then, but may have just been the copy I received.
Where is that, please?
Let me pull it up. The sub checklist. It's all the waivers. But if we're not overseeing that, it doesn't really apply to us anyway.
Mhm. Nope, the changes we don't have, apparently we don't do that.
It's submittal requirements for the special use permit, but that's for the. It's all the waivers.
That's interesting here because the copy I have was signed.
Good, perfect.
Yeah. I don't know how you
I
got.
could have had an earlier version. I don't know. It was just what was in my email packet.
Really?
Okay.
Okay. It doesn't make sense to me because there was no earlier version. Everything was submitted and I have the same thing that you guys have.
Okay.
Does everybody else have that problem?
Okay. Other questions or comments?
There is one thing I'd like to bring to the board's attention.
Good.
In the application, it cites that the current dimension of the building is 39.7 feet high, which actually exceeds the RCM zone, which is capped at 30 feet. However, pursuant to section 113C3, any non-conforming dimension does not affect any change of use or any adding of use to a structure. So as there's no change being made to the actual facilities and the standards of 408, which do not have a height limitation on existing buildings, There is no issue with this building, but it does I just wanted to point out to the board that it is in excess of the RCM zone, but that it doesn't pose a problem for compliance with the ordinance.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? You think from the audience? Then I will make a motion that we send a favorable advisory to the zoning board with the findings of facts that are listed under the memorandum saying that the the proposed use of an existing one-story structure to become a 5-bedroom used as employee housing with restrooms. It's removal of the sliding glass door and replacement with 5 windows is so fine. And there are 6 facts. Inn is defined in the zoning code as a building or complex containing 3 to 10 rooms or suites for rent. Each unit must have access to an inside lobby and be without individual cooking facilities. Meals for guests may or may not be provided. The proposed development aligns with this definition and does not concern rooms available to rent by guests. 2, the subject property is within the residential C mixed-use zoning, as well as the historic district overlay. 3, inns are allowed by special use permit in the RCM zone pursuant to number 408E. The proposed renovation also complies with the dimensional requirements of 408A2. The property conforms to all dimensional standards of 309C. 5, additional parking of 2 spots will be provided within the existing large parking lot already utilized for employee parking. And 6, the Manassas has been a hotel or in operation for over 100 years. And I would add, and there will be no change to the exterior of the hotel.
Other than those approved by the HDC.
By HTC, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And just a matter of correction of just minor typos, the special use permit is allowed per 309 E. And there is one dimensional standard of 309C that is not met, which is that height standard that I just pointed out to the board. But
Yeah.
again, pursuant to 113C3, that is not an issue of compliance with the zoning ordinance.
Okay, which is why I did not include it. So but if you think we should include it, we of course can.
I just wanted to note it just so that you don't have contrary findings of fact that you just
Okay.
listed.
All right. Good. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further comments or questions? Nope. Okay. All those in favor of the favorable advisory?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you're adding some more employee housing. I think that's great. All right, 4, zoning ordinance amendment. Define uses in the list of prohibited uses that the ordinance does not offer definition of. Review draft amendments and make recommendations to the town council, including a finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan. All right. Okay, Peter, if you would go over the changes that were made from last month, or do you want Michelle to do that?
I think Michelle or
Michelle.
someone from her law firm did those changes,
Okay.
so they might be
Better for her
more
to
able
do
to
it?
speak
Perfect.
to it.
Yes, the changes that were made from what you looked at last month are relatively minor.
Yes.
We changed number 4 in the general prohibitions of section 111 to add a reference to houseboats. And then we defined houseboats in section 202. And then we also altered the definition of floating residence in 202 to include that a floating residence is not a houseboat. The only other change that was made was in terms of the gambling facility definition. There was some concern that was expressed about not prohibiting otherwise permitted fundraising. And the way that the definition was reading, it just was a little bit jumbled, so we just changed the terminology just a bit to explicitly take out otherwise, games of chance otherwise permitted as fundraising, to clarify that. So those were the changes made to what you had already looked at.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Anything else you want to add?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Was this the document with the tents on it?
Yes.
I'm getting the three documents confused with,
No, this was a definition of words that were not defined in our ordinances.
And one of those words actually was tent. So you've actually considered tents before in its own separate ordinance. And it was still pending. As we took on other words that were undefined in the prohibitions, tent is one of those words that were undefined, and we noted as we were undergoing the review of tents that there were other words also undefined, which prompted the draft of this ordinance. So you'll find under section 202, numbered 183.1 in the draft in front of you is the definition of tent. So this draft ordinance encompasses tents and all of those issues that you had previously looked at in terms of tents, and should incorporate those changes that you've been discussing since that issue was first brought before you.
okay, yeah, I just read the tent. I missed the last meeting when we came to those conclusions, or when the board came to the conclusions of definition of tents. And so it may be too late to even comment. I don't want to interject if it's not the right time.
We decided to simplify. It became too complicated, and both for anybody to understand it, for enforcement purposes and so on. So the
Sure.
definitions were simplified that everybody could understand, it could be enforced and so forth. And of course, we always have the right to change it and update it as needed.
Okay,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and what this ordinance does is actually only define tent. It doesn't change any of the prohibitions in regard to tents. So those prohibitions stay as they were. So tents are only prohibited in certain circumstances, which would be identified again in the prohibitions of 111.
Yep,
So
there's
all
one.
that's changing in this ordinance is actually the definition of tent, creating a definition for it where one didn't otherwise exist. The treatment of tents, that's still something that can be addressed further by this board at a later date.
yeah, no, I think it was, what caught my eye was umbrellas. I thought that they're allowed, but tents aren't, but I can talk about it another time if it's not the appropriate time.
Yeah, okay, good. Other questions or comments? Break, go ahead. Yeah, I'm taking public comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we addressing on page 7, number 25, dealing with underground storage?
So this would be under section 111, I believe. There is existing prohibition against underground storage of certain products. And the change in front of you added propane to the underground storage. That's, and otherwise capitalized under the term underground storage and defined the term underground storage in section 202. So that's what's in front of you for the ordinance, if that provides any clarification.
Thank you. And my comment is, I don't know why we'd be prohibiting the underground storage of propane.
Yeah.
It's far safer to have an underground storage tank for pressurized gas like propane.
Who added, when was propane added? Sorry. Like you have to bury propane.
Well,
You don't have to.
but
Well-
the tanks do exist underground
exist.
currently. New ones, a lot more propane use is actually being installed underground.
Yeah, like
In the last.
pretty much on a weekly basis out here.
years.
That's pretty much what's being done.
Yeah.
Right.
I just didn't know what the discussion was. I don't remember the discussion around propane being necessary to bury. Oil, yes, we understand why. Propane, you want it buried. You want the tanks buried. If you have a 1,000-gallon tank, you want it buried.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is prohibiting it? This is a definition? I'm sorry.
Yes, this draft would prohibit it.
Yeah, so,
The draft in front of you added the term propane, so we
yeah,
could
we
take
don't
that
want to do
out.
that.
I think we
Take
made, from
it
what
out.
I'm hearing from the board, I think we really want to take that out.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. I wasn't around when the discussion happened.
Remember, I don't remember the discussion. I hate to say it, but I don't remember it.
I don't either.
It's not a recent change, so I don't think I was.
I believe it was the March meeting and I remember the conversation.
Good, go ahead, Peter.
I remember that being what this board wanted, but being somewhat surprised that this board wanted that. So I understand that either maybe people weren't understanding what they were doing, or on second look, maybe that's not the best policy.
Which page?
Page 7, number 25.
Or on the actual draft amendment that has the numbered lines, it should be the first page under section 111, general prohibitions, again, number 25.
I don't have the right document.
I don't have the right document. Do you?
I
know
don't
what-
have the right
It looks like
document.
this. It looks like
Okay.
this, and it's right here.
On what?
I
page?
have that, but
And
mine
it-
doesn't show that.
And it shows
May
propane on,
May 7th,
May 7th?
the document I have is dated May 7th.
and it's on the first page.
Section 111?
It's,
Thursday.
it's the one that has just the, changes highlighted in yellow. It does not have all the comments and so forth.
got
That
it,
was the
yep.
previous, document.
Since they're all titled the same, it's hard to differentiate.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
one
That's why I
is
was
which.
describing it. This one is the one where we inserted, like houseboats and, floating residents, that kind of thing. It's just the, just those highlighted. So,
Is it, Margie, is it section 111 definitions or proposed 202
Not
and
that
11
one
amendments?
it's, under the 111 general, prohibitions. And then it gets down to definitions, 202 definitions.
No.
And, I'm sorry, I jumped
Oh,
out.
proposed.
It's under, 111 general prohibitions,
Okay, thank you.
and it would be line 22.
I do vaguely remember having this conversation about underground storage.
I don't have underground storage. I don't remember the propane, but then,
I do remember someone saying, we have a lot of propane. I
yeah,
remember
that's
that.
fine.
And I didn't know.
So
So
if
let's
the
change- let's
desire of
try
the
that.
board is to remove it, we can take it out.
Propane isn't dangerous to soil or everything else on that list is.
Mhm. Yeah.
But propane isn't.
All right.
Thank you, Blake.
Good call.
Good catch.
All right, so we, let the record show that we are removing, including propane under general prohibitions 111. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I did
Peter?
receive an email from the town manager who was sitting in the audience and just read it. I was hoping to be here for the houseboats discussion and general prohibitions. I need to get on the boat at 5. The language in front of the board today reflects CRMC's current definition and alignment with the general ordinances. Kate, Karen, Jen, and I all discussed. The state is also forming a subcommittee to establish a statewide definition.
I think that was in regard to the floating residences and floating businesses and houseboat definitions. I know Karen consulted with the, I believe the town manager and the CRMC and found those definitions as drafted to be compliant. Is that what you're indicating?
Yes,
Yeah, we already, agreed that that was acceptable, I believe. Okay. Any other changes, additions? Okay, then I will make a, motion that we, approve the definition, for prohibition definitions, and under the finding of facts, the zoning amendment concerns Article 1, Section 111, general prohibitions, items 4, 9, 23, and Article 2 definitions, Section 202, definitions, items 188, and adding agricultural, aircraft, amusement parks, asphalt, car, commercial shooting range, drive-through, windows, equipment, field house, floating businesses, floating residents, gambling, gambling facilities, hog raising, houseboats, laboratory, livestock, motor vehicles, penal institutions, petroleum refineries, raceway, shipping containers, tents, trailers, underground storage, and vending machines. We would approve this with the one exception, which is removing the propane word. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further comments or questions?
Just one, Margie, if I can,
Good.
on flagpole. Was that something?
No, that's the next, I believe that's the next round, isn't it?
The only
it
thing that
was-
changed with flagpole is the numerical, to make sure it was in alphabetical order, nothing of the definition.
Yeah, it was in
changed.
alphabetical order after field house.
Yes.
I
That's
just-
why I concluded there, just because the number changed, not because anything about the definition changed.
Right. It just popped out at me, the definition, just reading it again and thinking about complaints we've heard in the past, the size of a flagpole, the height in particular, and the size of the flag on the pole. I don't know if that's something that we can control or we want to get into discussion about controlling that. I'm just saying that there have been people that have complained because I don't.
I think for the definition,
Because of
that's
the
fine.
size.
If we decide we want to regulate it, well, that can be done, but that's not
Okay,
part of the definition, as
Okay.
I read it.
that's all I had, Margie.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. Peter, anything else?
No.
Okay. Michelle, anything I missed?
No,
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
I.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Favorable is. Okay. Zoning ordinance amendment, accessory dwelling units. Zoning ordinance, section 513, review draft amendment and make a recommendation to the town council, including a finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan. Okay, let's take a look at this and see what Peter's going to walk us through this one. And I would recommend that we wait until June before making final approval, for the simple reason that we think that the state law may change and that may impact this. So I'm wait to approve it in June, or if it looks like something is going to change, we may even want to approve it in July so that we are consistent with anything that comes from the state. Peter's going to walk us through this. He has some concerns, particularly about section page 4. Go ahead, Peter.
So the solicitor prepared this, so that, again, they might be
Again, the comments back.
better to,
Great.
yep, prepared to present it, and I can chime in with a few
Okay.
comments. And the lighting ordinance, I will take a lead on.
Okay. Michelle, when you want to start?
Sure. As this board is aware, especially within the past year, there's been several significant changes
Lighting.
to the statutes in regard to
Use
affordable
program.
housing.
Excuse me,
Mostly.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm a little lost. Where are we, Peter?
Okay,
I'm
we
sorry to
are
interrupt
for
you.
the accessory dwelling units,
Okay, thank you.
which
Sorry
is
about
number
that.
5.
Sorry.
But is it the accessory dwelling unit lead with affordable housing, density residential, or is it the other document? The two documents,
The ordinance number 24.
well, they're both say ordinance number
Mm.
20.
They were both ordinance number 24. One has the comments on it, and it looks like this. The other is the way it is actually easier to read.
Is the
probably.
first paragraph number 3 accessory dwelling unit and then number 8 affordable housing?
No.
No.
Okay,
So
I'm just saying there's 2 documents that we received that are both titled the same, so I'm just trying to get on the right.
Okay,
page.
Michelle, do tell us which
Yeah.
one you're going to.
So one of the documents that you're looking for should have the red line changes and the comments on it. They're both the
Mhm.
same document. The one with the red line changes show you what changes are being made from the current ordinance to what we're recommending. The second one is what the ordinance would look like if those changes were adopted. So it's just a clean version, so it won't show any of what was there before and the changes that are being made. So for purposes of this conversation, you probably would like to look at the red line document that show the current ordinance and the changes that are being proposed to be made.
Okay, so it looks like this.
Right.
Yeah, I have that now.
Okay. It's ordinance number, for Town of New Shoreham. Appendix zoning, it starts with Article 2, definitions 202. Okay.
Thank you.
And like I said, just to give a very broad overview, there's been a lot of legislation which has really increased or pushed to have ADUs be developable, to streamline the process for ADUs, and to explicitly limit the control that zoning and planning boards have over the development of ADUs under certain circumstances. So the purpose of the ordinance that is in front of you is to come into conformance with those statutory changes. So as it is, we're not looking to, in this ordinance, to change any policies that exist in regard to ADUs. We are just making what changes are necessary to come into conformance. So as you are reviewing this, there's always policy considerations that can be taken into an account above and beyond what's been drafted here. And in fact, some of those policy considerations may be highlighted in the comments. Rather than review each change one by one, the document that you have in front of you should have all of the different changes that were made commented out. So it basically expresses what was changed and why it was changed. One of the biggest changes is that in residential zones, one ADU is permitted as a matter of right. So you can't require any process for that ADU in those circumstances other than basically an administrative building permit. So the ordinance now reflects that for those certain ADUs that are permitted by right, you go straight to a building permit and there is no review by planning or zoning in that circumstance. And then what the ordinance then seeks to do is maintain the other review and restrictions that were in place for all other ADUs that may be contemplated against other than that subset of automatically permitted ADUs. I think it'll probably be better to answer specific questions because it is a rather lengthy document with a lot of changes. But again, I did what I could to try and explain and comment the changes. Also, at the very last part is the Appendix B, the use table. And again, changes were made there just to make sure that they are consistent with what has already been amended previously and enacted by the town council in regard to ADU, because as you're aware, we recently enacted some ADU ordinance changes based upon the earlier round of statutory changes, and also this board's design of the express ADU process for special use permits. So essentially that use table is just mostly a update to make sure everything's in alphabetical order and everything is correctly reflected as to what the use categories actually are and where it all falls.
If it was up to me, I would just recommend that we keep this document as a reference document in our files so that if and when any such request comes before us, we can review the document. It's just too much, I think. And I also believe that I don't want to challenge what the state regulations have now become.
Well, the state regulations trump any of the contrary New Shoreham regulations. So the purpose of this amendment is to bring the New Shoreham ordinance in conformance with the recently enacted state legislation.
Right.
So we're not doing anything contrary to the state. In fact, we're bringing it into conformance with the state.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
pending legislation in front of us actually should have very little effect on this document. That's something I can take a look at prior to the next meeting, just to confirm. But as we have been tracking the pending changes to legislation, and none of the changes that we're making in this document should be undone by the pending legislation.
And I trust you.
Okay. All right, let's see. I think I saw Gail's hand up and then we'll go down to Claire.
I had a question. If part of this purpose is to clean up all the different sections of the ordinance so they all match, for lack of better words. I noticed that one of the documents still has secondary dwelling development outlined in it, but I thought we did away with secondary dwelling development. And then one of the documents for 513s refers to submitting a lease to the zoning official as a requirement, which we incorporated when we updated the 513 language, but one of the definitions in the other documents doesn't. So I just want to make sure everything.
Yeah, so I
correlates.
believe when this board reviewed the ordinance, one of the things that this board considered was taking out secondary dwelling development. However, when it went to the town council to be enacted, after review, the actually enacted ordinance did not remove the use of secondary dwelling development, so that still is an active use under the ordinance that was enacted by the town council. And with further analysis based on ADUs, and that there's a very small subset of developments that could fall under the category of secondary dwelling developments, which wouldn't necessarily fall under ADUs, which wouldn't necessarily fall under multifamily developments. There is some, in theory, overlap there, but there's actually more restrictions on secondary dwelling developments right now than there is on ADUs based on the legislation. So there's no harm in allowing that to remain, because we'd still be in compliance with everything under the statute in regard to ADUs.
And then the lease language, I just think if someone's looking up all the criteria for a 513, the lease language should be, I think, inserted in every area that refers to what is allowed and isn't allowed. And I couldn't go back, and I didn't have a printer where I was, so I didn't print all the documents and highlight where things were and weren't. So I could research that and get back to somebody on that tomorrow. But I didn't, I did notice it
Yeah, I do know
for
that,
consistency's sake.
I do know that, I believe there's like, I believe if I'm remembering correctly, there's a filing requirement for a lease. I don't know if maybe Peter can chime
Correct.
in on
There's a
this.
filing requirement for the zoning official.
And I
it was
believe
in
that's
one
in
spot,
five
but not
thirteen
the other.
somewhere, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Because part of it is, when you go to different zoning sections, you're reading about the same, you're reading the same criteria, but it's in a different section. And I just didn't write down the numbers and to find it quickly, but something I found.
So you're saying it should be in both sections?
Yes, I would think, or I'm wondering I would think it should be in both sections. So that if someone's looking up, because people look,
Yeah, I think we have,
Areas.
right, I think we have to find the two sections
okay.
prior to the end of next month's meeting and.
Yeah, as I said, this is
Figure
coming
it
back
out,
to us
right.
next month because A, it's a lot to absorb in 1 month, and B, the state may change some stuff.
Mhm.
In the next month, Margie, the state may
Well,
change.
that's
never
how
know. Not finished.
the state legislature meets till the end of
Oh, right,
June,
right.
so yes, things could
We're,
change.
yeah, we're expecting about a dozen more land use bills
Oh.
to pass this year
Oh.
by the end of June.
Thank you.
Sorry, Michelle, did I hear you say, sorry, were you done?
Yes.
Okay. Did I hear you say that one of the major changes is that you're now allowed a ADU by right? I thought we already had that. I thought you were allowed one ADU by right.
So ADUs were a permitted use in all residential districts. So
Okay.
yes, they were allowed by right, but before, many cities and towns subjected them to different processes of review. now not only are you permitted one ADU by right, if it meets with certain standards, the only thing that the town can require is an administrative building permit process. So not only are you permitted to do it by right, but there's literally no review of the planning board or zoning board prior to them obtaining this ADU. They can just build it, they can just get a building permit from the building official and build it on their property.
How is that different from how, is there any change for us since that it sounds like that was what was already allowed? Or what are the conditions, I guess is my question.
So in the past, most ADUs had to undergo development review by this board prior to the development of the ADU. In the interim, that might be a better question for Jen, how much the process is actually changing. But that is one of the fundamental changes of the state law that we sought to reflect in the ordinance to make it clear that no additional review was being required for those ADUs that are permitted, that can only require a administrative building permit.
Okay.
I think it already refers, doesn't it already refer to as long as they meet the standards in that particular zone?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
our current
Okay.
ordinance is. So I was just curious if anything really is changing for us. What exactly is changing with that for Block Island? Do you happen to know, Peter? or no?
That's the big one, is the DPR.
Okay,
Process is no longer enforceable on ADUs
okay,
in terms of how the town had structured its ordinance previously and how the uniform state rules now impact our ability to enforce the current ordinance.
okay. I guess I'm just still unclear about what the conditions are that would require.
For review?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What is, it has something changed. I just would love to know, perhaps for our next meeting, what exactly is changing for us, since I thought we were already pretty open to having people build ADUs as long as they met certain standards. Are there now different standards?
There are slightly different standards. For
Okay.
example, abandonment is something that the town had in where if you don't occupy it for a certain period of time, it's, or if you the transfer of ownership from one owner to the other, that transfer of ownership, once in this version of the ADU ordinance that's currently enacted, would have invalidated the ADU. State law says you can no longer do that. So once you have an ADU, it stays an ADU regardless of who it gets transferred to.
Are we still able to require that they be occupied year round?
So we do have that in the draft ordinance as an occupancy requirement. But that doesn't invalidate their status as an ADU if they're not occupied year round. You can't use them for seasonal or transient housing, but
Okay.
you can deem them abandoned, but then that's basically refutable because again, we have in there that occupancy requirement. We maintain that from the previous version. And what we called that is basically we're deeming it abandoned if it's no longer occupied year round. But if the owner were to say it's not abandoned, there's really not a lot that the statute would allow the town to do to revoke the status of an ADU after it's been formed.
Entertain my thought, if you would, if I built an ADU and someone used it for 3 years and then I abandoned it and rented it out as an Airbnb for a year, and then I went back to using it as an ADU, is that something that could happen?
No, because there's a specific prohibition. ADUs cannot be used for tourist transient use. That would be an Airbnb. So what you could do is abandon it for a year and not use it at all,
I see.
and then
That's
go
my
back to
question.
using it as
Yeah.
an ADU. but you can't abandon it for a year and use it as like an Airbnb.
Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I'd like to highlight for you a very specific policy change that this document creates, which I don't think aligns with state law. And that's number 12 on page 5.
I don't know that our pagination is the same as yours. Can you tell me what the caption, what section that's in?
Sure, I'm happy to read it. It's item 12 in, so it's item B. So under 513B12, standards for accessory dwelling units, general standards. And it's subsection 12.
Yep.
Got it.
And so what that says is that if the ADU is to be owner occupied, then the main house can't be rented.
It's actually the opposite. It's if
Yeah.
the house is being rented, the owner cannot then occupy its ADU.
I think that's what I said. I said if the ADU is owner occupied, then the house cannot be rented.
No, I think the intent is that the ADU cannot be occupied by the owner, period.
So,
No,
so
it's
that,
the ADU cannot be occupied by the owner if the owner is using the house for a tourist or transient rental. Basically, what we're looking is to prohibit the development of ADUs to allow for additional tourist or transient rental, because again, ADUs cannot be used for tourist or transient rental. So we're looking at a situation where somebody creates an ADU so that they can then live in their ADU and rent out their main residence.
I understand the intent. I'm going to raise an issue with the language. I can understand this if the main house is capable of being occupied year round. Where the main house is not winterized and is not capable of being winterized, this restriction shouldn't apply. And I'll explain why. I'll give you my situation. I live in a house that can only be occupied 8 months. It's on blocks. It's not winterized. I have to move off every November, and I can't come back here until March. My intent has been to construct an ADU for myself and then continue to rent that seasonal house out to tourists, a house that cannot be occupied year round.
This
And-
has come up several times.
I'm sure it has. I was not worried about the ADU, the 9-month limitation. I'm happy to state clearly that I'll be living in my ADU 9-month. I'm the type of person I think the ADU statute was aimed towards because I need year-round housing, which I can't have with my current house. So I think if this language was specific, that if the main house is capable of being occupied year-round, I don't have a problem with this language. If the main house is not capable of being occupied year-round, then I don't think that this should apply. There should be an exception. just wanna state
In
that
terms
for the
of the capability issue, if the main house is not being offered for tourist or transient use, the year-round thing wouldn't necessarily apply because an owner can at any time occupy an ADU as long as the main house isn't being offered for tourist or transient use.
So what you're saying is that the person can move out of their house and then just move into the ADU for the 4 months that they can't live in their main house.
Right, as long as you're not moving into the ADU to allow for additional tourist or transient use in the main house.
Understand.
But can I clarify that statement just real quickly? The ADU is the intention of the ADU is for year-round living though, not for people to be moving in
Yeah,
every 6 to 8 months, correct?
I had.
You do provide for rental. It's not short-term rental. And there's a specifically defined, it's not allowed to be used for tourist or transient use. And there's a specific statutory reference of what tourist or transient use is, as defined by the state. So it's clear that the ADUs cannot be limited to that. And yes, that we do require them to be used by residents. I believe there's an ordinance which deals with what residency is, and it's approximately 9 months of use. So an island resident can use an ADU. That doesn't necessarily mean an island resident can't use it only for part of the year.
But our language, unless we're changing the language completely, and I need to review all of this again, it does specifically state year round. It doesn't
Yeah.
refer to residency.
It says a year-round resident.
And it references the town definition of resident, which is at least 9 months a year.
It does, okay.
So what this is doing is saying that me, a resident, well, 8 months a year, because I don't have a winterized place, I can't now build an ADU, move into that ADU, and now I have this vacant building, my home currently, 8-month home, that I can't have someone live there year round. I can't have someone live there more than 8 months. What you're suggesting is that should just sit vacant. I would like to rent that out.
In your situation, why don't you just build another is it a land issue? Is it lot coverage issue? Is it,
It's a financial issue. I mean, you build a house out here.
but an ADU is a house?
So the renting of my seasonal
No,
the renting of the house
You're missing
will
I think
finance
we're talking
my ability to
semantics.
build an
I think it's
ADU.
semantics. You're saying ADU and I'm just saying dwelling.
Gotcha.
Why can't you just build another dwelling?
He doesn't have the land to build.
That's why I'm asking.
to-
Yeah, yeah.
a second
It's a lot coverage issue for
Yeah.
you.
All right, then
Yes.
let me ask a question. Is it allowable to switch names to call your ADU your main house and your main house your ADU? Are you allowed to switch titles?
Well, you can't rent the ADU on a temporary basis.
But regardless of what you do with it, if you build an ADU, can you then declare that to be your main house and convert your main house to an ADU?
Well, if it's a main house, then it's not an ADU, it's a
Limits
principal
to-
residence.
No, it's a principal dwelling. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, the ADU is an accessory. So your main dwelling is not your accessory. So but can you actually define your main house now as your accessory dwelling? No, because it's taller than your accessory. Your accessory has to be 25 feet, your house is 32 feet.
Yeah.
So I think you run into that criteria.
Yeah.
I think that would bear, I mean, I could look into the definition of what a principal dwelling is. I think that would better inform
Yeah.
how principal dwelling is defined under the ordinance.
Mhm.
There was no intention to change this because a principal dwelling has its own set of permissions, and actually you're allowed to do a far more with a principal dwelling than you are with an ADU, even though this process is streamlined. So I don't know whether or not he could create a dwelling and then call that his principal dwelling. But if it was his principal dwelling, then that main house would be an accessory dwelling unit because it would be an accessory use on
Right.
his property, and he wouldn't be able to rent that out in that situation either.
Mhm. I know when we were creating all this ADU language, the challenging part is that the state has, from what I can see, lesser restrictions than we do on an ADU. And so every township has different restrictions on what they allow for their use of an ADU.
Mhm.
And when we were going through our 513 ADU language, it was proposed that why can't an owner
Mhm.
live in their ADU year round and utilize that building year round and then rent their house, their main house, what have you. But everyone decided that just wasn't the intent. Even for some people who actually lived here year round. For whatever reason, there were members who didn't agree that that was going to be a good answer for the use of the ADU because it wasn't promoting the use for year-round people living here, working here, in
Mhm.
need of housing who don't own property. So that's part of that gives you some insight on that decision.
I understand. And most of those is,
Wanted ADUs to exist predominantly why everyone, the majority wanted the ADUs to exist for this island.
Mhm.
Am I off base on that?
You're right, and I've always struggled with the term accessory dwelling unit. If you have the land and it's another dwelling unit, it's not your primary residence. It's just another dwelling unit. Why? Like, if you have the lot coverage to build a let's just call it a small home, tiny house, and you want to live in that and do whatever you want with the other house that's on the property, why can't you? Why does it have to be called an ADU?
Most people don't, that, if they,
And I'm
yeah.
asking Blake, like, this is why, was it like, what, in your situation, is it a lot coverage issue?
No, I have plenty of land.
Okay, so
Yeah.
take that right there.
but he doesn't, he has you have 3 acres, correct?
There's 3
And you
acres.
can't have 2 dwellings on 3 acres.
That's,
Unless
yeah.
I have to read the 406 on secondary dwelling again, because I thought we had extinguished that and apparently we haven't. So you could look at secondary dwelling.
No kitchen.
406, but I don't think you have enough land for that either.
Understand. So yeah, I looked at the ADU in an accessory residential structure, but the accessory residential structure, I can't have a kitchen. So I'm left with, I'm left with an AD, I'm left with an ADU. And so I would just caution the board that the notion that this merely aligns us with the current state law, I feel that's incorrect. Specifically as to number 12, the state law speaks nothing of the main structure and limitations on the main structure. So I just want to just highlight that and tell you my situation and why I object to this language.
And just to clarify, on Honor, there in state law, there is a direct provision that says accessory dwelling units cannot be offered for tourist or transient use pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-63.1-14. And the intention of this draft provision was to, in following that, the spirit behind that, to disallow the development of ADU for tourist or transient use, for increasing the stock of tourist or transient use, and to try and sort of skim allow owners to occupy ADUs, but not to allow owners to occupy ADUs if they're using the ADU only to open up their primary residence for tourist or transient use. So that language can be fine-tuned to achieve whatever policy goals this board determines is the better approach to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you know, Blake, if you lived in the commercial district, you'd be able to do this.
I know.
But
I mean,
because
right.
or maybe it's just not written that you couldn't, because in the commercial district, you can rent your ADU seasonally. It doesn't say you have to shut it down in the winter, which is interesting, because then it leaves those commercial areas
Rent it
open.
seasonally to employees,
Mhm.
right?
To people deriving income on the island. Yeah, it doesn't
Right.
necessarily use
Not-
employee, just deriving income.
Not seasonally by the night. Or by
Correct.
the week.
It's
There's a
it's
difference.
deriving income on the island.
So if he was in a commercial district, he could still live in his ADU or rent his ADU to an employee, but he couldn't rent the main house out.
Mhm.
And this is what we're getting at, is like the ADU we've encouraged ADUs on Block Island to encourage the need to house or have year-round rentals, not necessarily ownership, right? That was kind of the direction we were going with it. You know, you brought up, well, what if a homeowner wants to build an ADU, move into it for the summer and rent the house out? I'm like, rent their main house out. Well, that defeats the whole purpose of it, because
Well,
you just took the ADU off the market for 3 months.
but no, let me just correct my thoughts on the whole situation, because I was an advocate for an owner being their own ADU, as long as they lived in it year round. Because there are some people who are striving to own a home here, striving to make things work, and the way they can make it work is by living in a smaller house year round and renting their main house for, to
Right.
have a
Exactly.
significant financial gain and allow them to pay their taxes and their bills and their what have you. But again, that wasn't passed. So I think that answers your question. And actually, even in the commercial zone, does that ADU lease have to be year round? Even though it's only occupied by someone here seasonally deriving income on the island? We've never tackled that aspect. Not that we have to do that right now, but it's an interesting thought.
One of the things that we could do is we could try and craft some language around that where we maintain that it can't be owner occupied if offered for tourist or transient use, to avoid that sort of 3-month situation, but say that, that doesn't apply to ADUs that are owner occupied for 12 months of a year or 9 months of a year.
So for me, I think if you have another dwelling on your property, you cannot rent either dwelling unless you've left the property for tourist or transient use. To me, that's how I feel about it. So you can't move into your ADU and rent your house by the week. Even if you live in that ADU year round, that's how I feel about it. And people are welcome to just.
Well, that was, I think
But-
that was.
That's what the current ordinance before you has, and I was just suggesting.
Yes,
that-
and I guess
other
I'm saying
language
that I'm
is-
in support of that
Yeah,
ordinance.
I mean, that was the intent, is to offer
Right.
residencies to year-round people. It was not intended as a way of a homeowner making a whole lot more money.
Yeah.
However,
And
however,
Lake situation, which is the first, like, this is a different twist on it, okay, like, I don't know how many homes out here are, have to be, shut down in the winter because
Not many.
but it's
I
a
don't-
different twist on it, and I'm still coming back to the fact, like, if you have 3 acres, you can't put another, it just bothers me if you have 3 acres and you can't. put
but
another-
I also would like to argue, because I like to argue, I think the owner should be allowed to move into an ADU if he or she rents out the main house year round.
No,
What?
this would not.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
I think we want to, I think we want, since I already told you we were coming back with this.
Yeah.
You want to mull on this a little bit, including Peter and Michelle. Think about this,
Mhm.
and maybe we can come up with something. But what we don't want to do is open up a can of worms
Yeah.
and have a lot of people then abusing this, which I consider it's a privilege. And you don't want people abusing it. So
Mm.
mull over it over the next couple of weeks and see if we can come up with something that will not let people abuse the privilege, and we'll see what we can come up
So
with.
there's two other things I want to bring to the
That was my next thing. Thank you.
board's attention on this. So first is 513B2B.
On what
which,
page?
On our track changes document is the bottom of page 5.
I see it.
All right.
Same document, sorry.
Would you repeat that again, Peter? I'm.
Yep,
I'm-
bottom of page 5 on the track changes document, it's section 513B2B.
That's number 25.
Line.
Line 27,
Line
I'm
20.
sorry, it's 31 on mine.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Any proposed accessory dwelling unit may be located.
Okay, for me, it's line 25.
Okay. So Margie and I spoke with Jen earlier today. And she thought that Roman numeral 3 requiring that you need 20,000 square feet of lot area to construct a new ADU is not consistent with how the town ordinance has been in practice the last decade and a half. So we thought maybe that provision is not necessary, and that perhaps existing accessory structure requirements for setbacks and lot coverage would be sufficient to regulate when new detached ADUs are constructed. And that the
But the-
town did not, yep.
The 20,000 square feet is directly from statute. That's like the minimum. This, what's provided right there is the minimum of what has to be allowed, permitted by a administrative permit use.
Right.
The town can give less stringent requirements than the 20,000.
Exactly, yep.
Yeah.
So I'm just flagging that for the board's attention. We can talk about it when Jen's here next month. And then the other thing is looking at ADUs in commercial zones. I think the way the definition of ADU has changed.
What number are
Okay,
you
number
on?
and page.
Where are you?
So it's really the first page, the definition of accessory dwelling unit.
Michelle's first.
Right, so this is requiring that you have an established residential use on the property before you can construct the ADU.
Mhm.
So if you're a commercial property, in a commercial zone, you might not be able to construct an ADU.
Where,
I felt that this,
What line
oh.
number are you on?
Line 12.
Line 12.
first page.
Okay.
first, yeah, again, that's directly from the state statute definition of ADU, so I'm not sure how
Right.
much flexibility we have there.
I think you would have to call it something else in the commercial zone. If it's,
And I think
or
that's
sorry,
one
if
of the reasons-
a commercial use, if you wanted to add a residential function to a commercial property, I don't think the term ADU would work.
I think that's one of the reasons why we maintain secondary dwelling development to retain that possibility.
Really? I didn't see that equating with commercial zone at all, but maybe that was the original intent of secondary. I have to look up section 406 again. So I have a better understanding of what. I remember secondary dwelling being an issue because it was a way for people to get two houses and not have to deal with getting an ADU. They didn't want to rent it year round. It was an easier way to get a secondary dwelling on your property, and that was happening.
Mhm.
And then they were converting ownership to condominium and selling the other dwelling. Because when you have a secondary dwelling, you can convert the ownership, or at least you could, where the way it used to be written, you could convert it to condominium and then just sell that.
But you need to have.
Because it
that
wasn't an
block.
ADU. But you didn't need the same, you didn't need a full 3 acres. Originally it was 70,000 square feet per unit, and they had to have. But then that criteria was updated, but it was still written so that it was easier for people with, say, 4 acres to get a secondary dwelling,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't have to have the ADU.
Mhm.
God,
I think Peter's point, though, is that if you go back to the heart of what an ADU is, it's an accessory dwelling unit. You can't have an accessory use without a principal use.
Right?
So the principal use has to be accessory to the principal use, and the principal use has to be a dwelling unit or a residential use.
So you're referring to if there is say there's a shop that's for retail use only in the commercial zone.
Right.
And you want to put an ADU, it wouldn't comply with the language because the primary use is not a residence.
Residence, yeah.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
understand now, sorry, thank you.
Does that include, like if you have an apartment upstairs, like is that considered an ADU? Like above a shop?
It doesn't meet the definition of ADU.
Right.
So whether or not that's the principal use, and you could add an ADU to that, I think is depending on the specifics of that property. It's certainly a mixed use property, and it would fall under mixed use provisions of the code. It might also be a single family.
Can we update the language just in the commercial zone that doesn't preclude someone for having an ADU because of that particular language?
I don't think you can call it an ADU. You have to call it something else.
Yeah, it's
Oh, what would you call
an apartment.
Or,
Yeah, but
or
if
we
it's a
could utilize
cottage-
the existing
Oh.
secondary dwelling development and tweak that definition so that it's applicable.
Like a shopkeeper's apartment, you
Right.
could call it.
it? But what if it's a whole building with an apartment, not just an apartment, it's a cottage, it's a little house.
A shopkeeper's dwelling unit.
Call it employee housing.
Or it's just a dwelling unit. I mean, you have the definition of just a dwelling unit.
Underground.
I'm not sure I don't understand why you would have to name it differently. I guess I just have to.
Because the
Because
definition
it
won't
doesn't
fit.
fit.
The
That's what I'm saying, but can't you?
Oh, I
Change
see.
the definition. Create a specific definition for ADUs.
No, you can't have a word defined differently than the state.
But you're trying to define ADUs differently.
You can't.
Yeah.
State takes over
Sure.
over us.
So you're saying we can't have ADUs in the commercial zone right now because they exist?
No, if there's a if there's a primary residential.
And
So if it's a
existing
house, yeah, in a commercial zone.
existing ADUs would be basically grandfathered as legal non-conforming uses if the statute changes So the definition wouldn't allow ADUs, quote unquote, in a commercial zone. They could also just be called dwelling units. And if they're the principal dwelling unit for that lot, then the principal dwelling unit for that lot and the use is, like he said, single family or whatever the use is, whether it's rented or not, if there's only one dwelling unit or more, it follows those same standard ordinance provisions.
Hmm.
I think getting caught too much in the terminology probably is not advantageous. The intention here is to provide this accessory use. So it's under very similar standards to your similar accessory uses like a garage or something of that nature where it's accessory to a residential use. They're considering these dwelling units accessory to a residential use.
Mhm. Okay. Interesting.
So section 411 is the special use criteria for mixed use, which is what this would apply to.
Okay.
And it,
Okay.
it looks like it limits residential to upper floors.
Anything else, Peter?
That's all that's on my list. Do you have anything else in yours there, in your notes, Margie?
Nope, that's
Okay.
what I have. We've hit it one way or another. So we'll put this aside, think about it over the next several weeks and we will
I
work
have-
on it again.
Excuse me, I have,
questions too.
oh,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Not till you-
and let me just, sorry, I lost my spot here, but
That's
I
okay.
had a question about
Now's the time.
48, where was it? What was this? Wait, Mary, you go, because I'm sorry, I lost my
No, that's
spot.
okay. Peter, there's a few questions if I may, Margie.
Mhm. Yeah.
Can it, this might be redundant, can the ADU, Peter, be within the house?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then I just have a couple of really quick questions, just for my need to learn more about it by next month. Do we have, okay, so this is page 9. Page 5, Peter, at the top, line number 1. It was 7's crossed out, it's 8 for the maximum square footage of 1,200 square feet. And I know we all struggled with getting to that number. I was just curious if, I know there has been discussion about architects that have pro bono designed homes that fit the standards for an ADU. What I was wondering is in this document also, there is a discussion of having a 3-bedroom ADU within 1,200 square feet. Have any of the architects made a design for a house that's 1,200 square feet with 3 bedrooms that you know of?
I think that was my first meeting here talking about ADU designs, and I think what we were going to do was look at previously approved ADUs
Okay.
for designs that we liked, and I do not know what any of the previously approved ADUs were, so I couldn't speak to their types, but Amanda might.
There's one.
If they look at previous, I believe there's at least one, if not two, that
Okay.
are 3 bedrooms.
All right, just curious. Go ahead. Thank you.
So, I just had a question about on the first page, number 48, the definition for density residential says accessory dwelling units are not included in the calculation of residential density for a larger development proposal. I just would love some clarification about that. What is a larger development proposal? What does that one mean? Oh, sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. Could you hear me, Michelle?
I could.
Okay.
So if you think about the development proposals that you see before you for subdivisions or even multifamily uses, let's say that you have a building that's going up that's going to have 6 apartments in it or something like that, and also an ADU on the property. If you're limited to a residential density of in that square footage on that property that's being developed, and it's maxed out by those 6 units, the additional ADU on that property isn't counted towards that residential density. And that's language directly from the state statute.
Okay. Is larger development proposal, is that defined somewhere?
No, it's, again, that's directly mirroring the language in the state statute. It's not defined in the state statute what a larger development proposal
It's,
is.
yeah, it's intended for subdivisions and multifamily housing, is what we call it in New Shoreham.
Okay. It just seems kind of vague, and we've been put through the ringer trying to get everything defined.
There's something vague going.
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot in state statute that still remains pretty vague, so.
Yeah, no.
We also don't want to go too far in defining what state statute has to say because they might have a contrary intent.
Sure. And then I saw somewhere in here, we were gonna require or was proposed to require one parking space per bedroom of an ADU. That felt kind of excessive to me, but if,
Again, it's, you can require one off-street parking per bedroom pursuant to statute. That's a change that was recently made. It used to be one per ADU. Now it's one, you can require up to one per bedroom of the ADU. But again, that's a policy determination that can be made. No change was actually recommended there. It was just highlighted as a policy issue that can be discussed.
right, I guess my comment is that I think one per unit seems appropriate.
I think I agree with that. Me too. Okay, anything else? All right. Then we will move on to the next thing. Make notes. We'll bring this back again next month, for better or for worse. Okay. Number 6, zoning ordinance, amendment for outdoor lighting ordinance. Discuss and act on an amendment to the zoning ordinance, section 512, outdoor lighting ordinance. So have that to look at. Again, it will come back in June, once we've taken a look at this. And, okay. Whoops.
So this one is me.
Yes.
I think it might have been March as well that we last talked about this one, maybe February.
It's been several months.
The intent was to compare a draft that had been prepared last year with what is currently in the zoning ordinance. And so I met with Jen and Karen, and what we did is we translated that draft ordinance into a modification of the existing language in the zoning ordinance.
So it's similar, but not the same as what you've been looking at. So if you have questions or comments, now would be the time.
And we can go through it. It is a little tricky to read with all the track changes, but the idea was to translate as much as possible over from that draft ordinance to the existing regime of the section 512.
I just had one question. How easy is it to define the luminaire 232 lumens? I mean, how do people know that when they're buying lighting to install? If you're someone not using a contractor or an architect, you're just going out to buy a light. Is that on a lighting box if it's got 232 lumens?
It's on a bulb.
It's on-
And if, sometimes you buy a luminaire without bulbs, sometimes you buy a luminaire with the bulbs. I imagine it's on the description of luminaires with bulbs as well.
Okay, I haven't had to buy any luminaire lighting that I'm aware of.
So it's the fixture. That's luminaire is the whole fixture, right? So if it's rope lighting, then they have many bulbs or string lighting. But if it's a task light,
right.
uh,
But how does
with an Edison bulb.
Translate to? That must be the wattage, you mean? Like a 60 watt, 40 watt? 80
It's
watt?
right. It's pretty close to the 60 watt
Okay.
old equivalent of
Peter,
incandescent.
did we look at whether or not any of the definitions needed to be supplemented to define?
We talked about that, Karen and Jen and I, and decided not to change any of the definitions.
Okay, I've got one question. I'm concerned about you're removing the minimum lighting associated with the display of national and state flags. Because this flag is supposed to be lit 24 hours a day when it's dark. And this is on the last page under let's see, where is it? K down at the end under exceptions.
So, right, it's currently an exception, so minimized is a difficult term to enforce, but the current exception is that minimized lighting for national and state flags is not subject to the requirements of the lighting ordinance.
Yeah, but why did you remove it off of you? At least on my copy, it's been struck. It looks like it's been struck out.
So that would make it require lighting of flags to be in compliance with the lighting ordinance. In other
Okay.
words, it couldn't shine into a neighbor's property.
Okay.
It's still
But-
permitted
But still,
with other lighting, right?
Okay.
But subject to the
So
requirements of the
it's-
ordinance.
lighting is still permitted, but it needs to be set up so that because lighting is supposed to shine up onto the flag in some way. So I wanted to
It-
make sure. that
Right,
that would
it's,
still
if you have a flag at night, you're supposed to light it, correct?
Yes.
Would you restrict those with lumens as well, wattage?
Right, it would be
Mhm.
subject to the requirements of the ordinance.
I have to read it again. I read through it. but
That's why I was putting it together.
I think we'll send out a clean version too. I think.
A
that'll
cleaner
help.
version, and because it's also 506.
Well, it just seems to have the
We're getting tired.
luminaire language, and luminaire seems to be multiple light fixtures, so is it addressing individual spotlight fixtures also and stand just a light outside of somebody's house that's just individual?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things I noted too is that it refers to appendices. And we reviewed those and none of the current appendices would be inconsistent with any of the changes that
Correct.
are being made. So I just wanted you to be aware that they exist, because if you saw them in your review of the ordinance, that those were incorporated as well, that they currently exist. We might want to just change the title of the appendices if we're going to change the 512 to lighting rather than outdoor lighting. We might want to change the appendices to lighting rather than outdoor lighting.
Good
Right,
catch. Thank
yeah,
you.
Yeah, good point. And can we also consider the amount of lumens? Other towns are saying 1,500, not 1,800. Or
So,
is
I
that? a
think the
state?
number was existing, so
Okay,
we can certainly reduce it.
Okay.
If that's,
I'm just curious if
Right,
it's worth
yep.
looking at in the next one.
Yeah.
Okay,
I guess.
thanks.
Going back to my flags, I'm still on the flags. I haven't left. I want to make sure that the lighting can stay on all night, because that's, I think on the ordinances, they're talking about turning them off an hour after the people leave, or turning them on an hour before sunrise. And so I think that was why we put it under the exceptions, because the light would have to stay on all night. So when you're reading through that again, look at it, because I still think it needs to be put back in. Okay, I've said enough. You heard me.
Yeah, that could be debated.
Yes.
Good point, though.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because in this case, it does have to stay on all night.
Because flagpoles can be right next to somebody's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a bright light.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you
Directed
certainly would
right
have
at your
to like
house.
limit the amount of lumens you could use. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with that. But the way I remember the regulations is they're off 20 minutes after somebody leaves the property, or they're off between like 11 at night and sunrise the next morning, or it is motion detector. And obviously a flag isn't going to be a motion detector, even if it does move.
No, it would be.
So anyway,
Yeah,
think about that for
right.
next time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. I guess it's fortuitous of several issues I care about are on the agenda tonight. Item G under 512, it's kind of hard on this document. Heading is landscaping.
Let us find G for
Sure.
landscaping. Okay, read the bottom of page 3.
Yes, landscaping, it says luminaries for all landscaping, parking and pedestrian access areas shall have no direct upward light emission or shall be fully shielded or recessed. And then it says luminaries used primarily to light footpath should be footpaths, I think.
Yep.
Should be no higher than 3 feet above grade. We spent a lot of money at the Manasees designing, I think, a beautiful outdoor lighting which complied with the existing ordinance. Specifically, our upward lighting of some of our trees, some of our large flower pots on our walkway, and the downward lighting, which is higher than 3 feet in our grass walkway from the upper parking lot down to the outdoor seating area. That lighting, I think, now wouldn't be in compliance with the new ordinance. And I would just invite the board to take a walk through and see what we did. It's not offensive at all. There's very minimal light pollution. I would say no light pollution because we use just very low wattage bulbs in the entire landscaping illumination. And so I would object to G. I just think it's way too broad. It doesn't limit upward lighting, the lumens in the upward lighting, and it doesn't allow for something that's higher than 3 feet with very low lumens to illuminate a footpath. So I think G is just problematic. We're in compliance with the lighting ordinance. I see a lot of lights out there that aren't. Maybe the issue we're having is more of an enforcement of the existing ordinance than the need to craft a new ordinance. Thank you.
By the way, does pre-existing conditions play a role in this?
Yes, 5 years.
Oh, right. You have 5 years.
It's 5 years, but it's beautiful what we've done and we spent a lot of money on it. We don't have to redo it. I know. Thank you.
I'm getting tired.
Yeah, as I said, we're gonna bring this back. But I wanted to do a run through so we could now focus on some of the things that we either agreed with or want to broaden or tighten up depending. So you have the chance to look at
Okay,
it.
so getting back to the flagpole, what if we limit the lighting being right under the flag and pointing straight up as opposed to slightly outside of the flag at an angle? That would eliminate neighbors. That would reduce the neighbors' concern, wouldn't it?
Well, I was also thinking about, for example, on the flag pole that's on the top of the National, that would require more than one light.
Well, I think, and what you're
Too
saying kind of addresses what Blake's saying, you know, maybe you just reduce the number or take into consideration the lumen count
Yeah.
for upward lighting.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
might
right.
be a
it's something
solution.
to look at. Anyway, these are things we need to talk about over the next couple of weeks and come back with some ideas for us to look at how we can solve some of these problems. Any other concerns we want to have them take a look at?
Can't think of any.
Okay, all right, we'll see this again in June. This is a very nice first draft, guys. Thank you very much. I know it's not easy. Okay, 7, report from the zoning official regarding substandard lots. Jen produced this for your information. If you want her to do more comments and so forth on it, we can do that next month.
Can I ask a quick question on it?
Yeah, sure.
This
Peter's here, he can talk.
This report is
Vanessa's here,
all-
she can talk.
this is a report from all the applications that have come forward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. I thought it meant these are all the non-conforming lots that exist.
Me too. I thought it was an.
No, those are just the ones that
Oh.
have utilized the calculation to develop.
Do we have an inventory?
No, I imagine it's much of the town is not conforming. It's substandard.
Because for me, knowing which lots are substandard or how many lots are substandard is very interesting in terms of, number one, how many more houses can be built under the new state regulations? Secondly, which of those properties do we want to use to accommodate sea level rise concerns or flooding concerns? Because, you know, all of that stuff.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy to calculate through GIS.
Yeah.
And so it might be a good thing to ask the GIS coordinator to
That would be
look at.
valuable information.
In fact, when I first looked at this, that's what I thought it
Me
was.
too.
And then I
numbering
went back
them.
here and it says lots of records as is hope.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
forth. It's called learning to read.
Because in 2015, we had a build-out map
Yes, which is
created,
also useful.
which I always go back to.
Yeah, basically what this list is projects that would have needed a variance from the zoning
Um,
board prior to the state legislature changing the rules in
So-
2023.
We need to then update our build-out map because of the new state regulations regarding what you can construct or not construct, because in 2015, we had up to 500 possible buildings that could still be built. Not that it would be, but with the new regulations, that number would go up.
Yeah, be something.
Only on lots that were already existed that had no housing on them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. But that's interesting information. Especially since we're also looking for land for affordable housing. Everybody's competing.
That's true. Okay, so if there are no questions on this, we'll go on. The number 8, this is just a report for your FYI information on the administrative office regarding subdivisions. And that's just for your records. And we do not have minutes, so they will be rolled over until next month. So anything else before I adjourn the meeting? Okay, then I make a motion that the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And you want to pose? Michelle, thank you very much for all your help. Peter and
you.
Amanda, appreciate all yours.
Michelle, you're very clear in your language. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was a little awkward at the beginning, so I'm glad we got through it.
Well,
All the meetings would be like.
it's a whole new procedure and I don't blame it for being a little confusing, especially when the
I was
medical.
a bit confused and I
Yeah.
admit it, and I take all the help I can get.
Well,
So
and
thank
that's
you.
actually, development plan review is going to be one of the ordinances that's probably gonna be in front of the board in the near future, so hope to avoid that type of confusion and circumstance.
Good, thank you. Appreciate it.